Okay, we're another week into the stay-at-home order here and self-quarantining and social distancing and all of the craziness that COVID has brought us this month. Yes, I am at a different location. I'm currently in the kitchen because I was kind of already here and I was trying to get my laptop to work, but the video just didn't look great, so here we are. All right, so I think we've reached that point. If you're like me, I've been doing all of this like social distancing and like staying at home, all of that for about a month now. I want to say, I'm going to have to count weeks. I have a calendar in front of me, so it's not going to take too long. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. This is the end of like my 5th week of doing this, guys. As I mentioned, I've been doing it kind of for an extra week because I had spring break prior, and so I didn't go to work and I kind of stayed home mostly. I did go out and see a few people that week because I had to for like I had to go see somebody for an interview and do stuff like that. So I did get out of my house, but that was like the beginning of the week, and like the end of the week I stayed home for the most part. But if you do want to count weeks, this is about the 4th week of doing this without spring break being like not quite stay home. But anyway. Depends how picky you want to be. 4 or 5 weeks I've been doing this. And I think we've all reached that point, if you've been like me and you've been doing it this long, that we're starting to crack a little bit. We're trying to like maintain sanity. So I've been hearing a lot that people are like reaching their breaking point where they're just like breaking down in tears and crying and like freaking out. Partly because they're trapped here, partly because you're kind of stuck in your own thoughts and you're like freaking out as to what you're supposed to be doing. And there's a lot that goes on in your brain, especially when you're by yourself. So I don't live by myself. I live with my husband, but he does leave for a grand majority of our day to go to work because he's an essential worker. I stay home, so I spend most of my time by myself. There's like maybe an hour or 2 in the morning when we're up and he's getting ready, and then like an hour or 2 after he gets home at night that we get to spend each other. But for the most part, I'm by myself, and then I wait for the weekends to like actually get to spend time with him. And so for me, it's been really frustrating, like figuring out. I mentioned in one of my videos about the whole extrovert thing that I need people. I've been getting really good about that. I usually call somebody. I've been talking to people. It's been really helpful to me. But I think we're starting to reach that point where we're getting a little bit of cabin fever. We're kind of freaking out. We're trying to figure out how to make this work for as long as we need to. And for me, what that looks like, reaching like this point of like cracking inside a little bit, is being stuck with my thoughts, first of all, which is never a good thing. But it's also been watching people start to share false information because they really want it to be over. So I've seen, and I usually don't do this, but I unfriended because I just couldn't stand having that on my feed after like so many times of trying to reach out and be like, hey, can we stop doing this? But I kind of reached that point where I just have been trying to help people stay informed. So I keep watching the news, I keep asking questions, I've lost track of everything else going on, but I've been trying really hard to keep up with the numbers and the good information and what we should and shouldn't be doing. And because of that, it's gotten really frustrating to me to see people still going out like it's not a big deal. People sharing information that like, oh, Easter, it'll all be over. Or, you know, I've mentioned before I'm very religious and I really do believe in my faith, but seeing people post things like, it's all in God's hands, so it doesn't matter if I go out. That one gets to me a lot in a very special way. But like all of these things that we share that aren't helping right now, they're just giving people bad information and they're really hurting our situation. So they've released numbers recently that if we do everything correctly and we get our stuff together and we actually do our best in this situation, we are still predicting about, I think it was like 100 to 200,000 people dead. That is a lot. Percentage-wise, sure, it's not as bad as it could be, but that's still a lot of people, and that still makes this a very serious issue, and we really need to be taking the proper precautions and know why we're doing things. Like, I've seen so many YouTube videos, and I'm very happy for it, of like nurses and people who use gloves regularly, whether in the lab because they work in a lab, or school, or whatever profession taught them how to use gloves properly, are showing people that, look, just because you have gloves on doesn't mean that you can start touching everything. It just means that you can try to contain what you've touched to things like your phone, your face, you know, like you can touch stuff now, but then you have to take it off properly, and you still have to wash your hands afterwards. And I appreciate them so much because they're sharing good information for us to know. But just because we have them doesn't mean that, oh, suddenly that this is going away. Or cities are starting to require people, if you leave the house, you have to wear a mask. Great, that's awesome, because so many people who have this disease can be asymptomatic and be spreading it and not know. So now suddenly if we put a mask on everyone, you know, we're covering not just the healthy people, but like the people who really should be wearing the mask, the sick people. So they're great, but if you also don't know how to use a mask properly, if you don't want to put it, because it's supposed to go over your nose, under your eyes, and it's supposed to be pretty tight to keep everything in here, because if you're sneezing, if you're coughing, it keeps it contained away from everybody else, which is kind of the point. But you also can't just be like taking it off and like throwing it somewhere. Like, you have to put it away properly. If it's a reusable mask, you have to wash it properly to get the germs out. Otherwise, you just keep it on there, and if you're just throwing it everywhere, you're spreading it around your house and everybody else can get it. I've been boiling over this with this a while. And I try really hard to follow all of these. I really haven't left the house in a while. I think the last time I left the house was, I think we went to pick up food on the weekend. And I didn't get off of the car. I stay in the car. I just get in a car because I want to see other things, and then I don't get down until I get home, and I'm still touching the same things. I don't touch anything. And I'm also there for support, like when my husband has to get down to get something important, I like douse him with hand sanitizer because we can't wash our hands immediately in the car. And then we get home and he has to wash his hands. But my point in all of this ranting is that we need to stop hurting each other with sharing all of this misinformation, because that's all we're doing. Because while I can read some of this misinformation about how somebody shared a post that was, the real way that we can get rid of this is by all just going outside. That is the opposite of what we're being told to do right now. And somebody thought this is going to be a good idea to tell people that the only way that they can get this over with is if they go outside. I can read that and see how frustrating it is and how wrong it can be. Yes, we should probably, like, if I have a backyard where if nobody else is outside, like my neighbors aren't outside, I'll go outside for a little bit, get a little sun. But some people might take it as like they can just go and do their normal lives because they're getting outside, and that's not true. That's the reason why we have stay-at-home orders in place. That is the reason why we have all of these things, these laws, these rules, these enforcements at various workplaces, is to try to keep people safe. And you counteracting that with sharing bad articles is not helping. People sharing that this isn't as big a deal as it is isn't helping. Should we be panicking in the streets and like buying and like stocking up? No. We should just be buying about 2 weeks at a time so that we don't have to constantly go out. That's not stocking up like it's the apocalypse. But it's also not as small a deal as that, you know, oh, well, then we just go about our normal lives. There is a fine line that we're walking that we need to try to follow so that this doesn't end up being worse than it already is. And this frustrates me because, like I mentioned, that I can read this and I can tell, okay, well, this doesn't sound right, this isn't, and I go and I fact check things that I feel like sound suspicious. There are people that I know who will read that and just take it as it is, be like, oh, they must know, they must have done the research. Or they'll see things like, oh, this doctor said. Look at the whole vaccine issue. One doctor who has since lost his license, who has since been disproven time and time again, said that vaccines cause autism, and suddenly all of these people have stopped doing vaccines. There's a wave of anti-vaxxers now. There's a name for it, of people who stopped doing it because of bad information from sources that weren't proven, who just made a statement because they thought it would be cool, or they just didn't think that big a deal of it. The same thing can happen with this. You can share misinformation on an issue. You can say, oh, well, it's not a big deal, or, well, it doesn't really help, or, we can just go outside. Every time you share that, you're risking somebody who can't tell the difference between good and bad information taking that to heart and risking things. Like, I hear people being like, well, I've been quarantining and my friend has been quarantining, so we should be able to visit each other. No, you shouldn't, because there's so much more that you don't know that could have happened. They could have already had it, or they could have gotten it from somebody else. They could be living with someone. Like I mentioned, like, I live here, I stay here, I don't go anywhere that I don't have to. But my husband still has to work. So I have to act like I either already got it or we might get it, so that I don't go visit people, so that I don't give it to people. And that's the point. You never know who in your little circle won't be able to survive this. I don't even know if I would be able to survive this. That's the thing. We don't have enough information to know who is really vulnerable. We thought it was just old people. Then we figured out it could be anybody who's immunocompromised, immunosuppressed. People who seem virtually healthy now are getting sick and dying from this because of complications. We don't know who's at risk. We don't know who's going to be a mild case or who's going to be a severe case to need hospitalization. And because of that, we have to be more active about taking care of each other, about working together, not against each other. We shouldn't be yelling at each other, all sorts of different sources and information as if there's some way to be split on this. The best way that I've been able to describe it to people is you need to act like you are sick, and everybody that you come into contact with could die from it. Because that's the reality, whether we like it or not. I've had to explain this to somebody who wanted to just go see their friend because they just hadn't seen him in a while. And I get it. Trust me, I get it. Every day, I desperately want to go see my family. I've had to cancel all of these trips that I had planned. My friend was supposed to come visit for my birthday. I wanted to go send some stuff or invite my friends over for his birthday. My mom's birthday, Mother's Day was coming up, and I wanted to have a trip then. There's, our anniversary's gonna come up, and I don't know if we're gonna be safe to travel or not. There are all of these plans that I have had to cancel because we don't know, and we don't want to risk it. And it's scary to not know if I have it or not, because I don't have symptoms, so I don't need a test, so I won't know. Because again, there are people who are asymptomatic. There are people who have a mild case who it feels like a cold and then they just move on and they're fine. So we need to stop fighting each other and work together to get this to go away faster. Because if we listen, if we follow the rules, if we all act like we have it and we don't know who we can give it to, we'll be in a better situation because we'll stop spreading it so quickly. Another thing that we have to remember, and it's the one that gets me the most, is that, and it really upset me when I found out about this, if there is somebody who is an at-risk person that you know about, whether they're older, whether they're immunocompromised or not, and you want to go visit them, think about all of the places that you have been. Those are all of the places that you could have possibly gotten it, and you are now giving it to them. So like I mentioned, my husband still goes to work. Everybody that he comes into contact with could possibly have it. They're doing everything they can. They're taking temperatures when they go in. They're keeping people apart. They're trying to limit the amount of people who are in the office at any one time because they have to keep working. But that doesn't take away the fact that every single person who he comes into contact with, he brings that home. Every single person and every place that they've been, they bring to that office and could possibly have it. and he brings it home. So I don't know if we've ever had it or not. I don't know. And that is the part that we need to remember, that we just don't know. I feel fine. I feel about as fine as I've ever felt in spring. Like, I haven't left the house, so my allergies aren't acting up as bad because I don't leave the house, and we have like all of these air filters all over the place, specifically because I'm allergic to dust. So I feel fine. I feel like I always do during this time. But I might still have it. So if I feel like, oh, well, I don't leave the house, I can just go visit my friend who's pregnant. I could go visit a friend whose daughter has asthma, and I don't know if I have it or not. You have to ask yourself, is it worth the risk, if you have it, to give it to them and risk their health? I know there are going to be some people who, well, my grandmother really needs me to go and visit because nobody else can take care of her. I get it. But if you act like you have it and you do everything you can to make sure that they're safe, putting groceries on their doorstep and letting them know to come get it, or limiting contact to them, being like, hey, stay in your room, I'm going to go load up your fridge or whatever, and then I'm going to leave and clean everything on your way out, as if you have it but you still have to go, we might be in a better spot. If you don't have to go visit them, don't. Trust me, it's killing me to not be able to go see my family, to not be able to go hug my grandmother, to not be able to go and see my in-laws. We can't risk other people's lives because we don't think. It really does get me that people aren't understanding this. It's not always just about you. It's about everybody else. Because if we have it and we go see our friends who one is pregnant and one works at a grocery store, we've just given it to them. And then that's going to give it to whoever else they have to get into contact with. If I go to the grocery store and I get it from someone and I bring it home, I'm giving it to my husband, who then has to go to work and give it to all of those people. If me and my sisters all come from wherever we're at to our parents' house, we're bringing every place that we've ever been to that one place. And then my parents can go somewhere and take whatever we've given them with them. Maybe we have it. Maybe we don't. But again, we don't know. And that is the part that I keep trying to drive home to people because it's very frustrating. You have to act like you don't know. And try to be as careful as you can. I don't know how else to put it. I don't know how much louder I can scream this. Because it's true. Unless you're tested, and even then if you're tested, that's hard to know. We had a case here in San Antonio months ago in the very beginning. We had 6 cases who were contained and quarantined. And one woman came back, I want to say it was 2 or 3 tests, came back negative. And they let her go, and she went to a mall, and her 4th test came out positive. Suddenly, every single person who she came into contact with could have it. We don't know. And unless you are one of the few people who happens to get symptoms and get a test and end up in the hospital, you really won't know. So please, we need to learn to work together. Because when we all come together and we do our best and we act like we have it so that we can be safer about it, we have a better chance of fighting this off. I know there is so much misinformation out there, and it's so hard to figure out what's true, what's not true. Reach out to people. Reach out to people who are in the medical industry, who might know something. Reach out to people who are really good at fact checking. Trust me, all of us know that one person who fact checks everything. My sister's one of them. My husband is one of them. Ask people. That's how we're going to get better information. And if you're just not sure if what you have to do is essential, I really need to mail something out to my mom. But do I really need to do it right now? Is it worth the risk that I have it and give it to everybody to mail this out? If it's not, don't do it. And I know it's tempting because trust me, I really want to go outside and just be social again. But it's just not worth the risk of getting everybody else sick because I want to go outside. And I think once we understand that and start applying that, we're going to be a lot better off. I've ranted on for quite enough time, so I'm going to sign off. But feel free to drop questions in the comments, send me a message if you want me to talk about something or you had questions or concerns about something I've said. I'd be happy to try to answer them for you. Until then, thank you for listening, and go buy a book on Amazon or something that keeps you busy because currently this is mine. And I'm going to have a weirdly large amount of stuffed animals when this is over. Thanks for listening.